Let's talk about the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. It is a worldwide outlaw motorcycle club whose members typically ride Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Its common nicknames are HA, Red and White, HAMC, and 81. With a membership between 3,000 and 3,600 and 467 chapters in 59 countries, the Hells Angels is one of the largest motorcycle clubs in the world. Many police and international intelligence agencies, including the United States Department of Justice and Europol, consider the club an organized crime syndicate. While Hells Angels Motorcycle Club members have been convicted of serious crimes and had been given quite a number of labels over the years, such as outlaws, criminals, drug dealers, and so on, they also adhered to a strict code of conduct in which breaking it could cost them a lot. In 1948, World War II veterans created the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. Those were the times that the world was restless in peacetime and military surplus bikes were still cheap. By then, Hells Angels members were viewed by many as warriors. Hells Angels originally came from a popular nickname for bomber squadrons, which is just a proof that the organization has a strong military foundation. And whether they like it or not, warriors are known to live by a code. Ralph Sonny Barger, Hells Angels' former president of the Oakland, California chapter, wrote a book entitled Hells Angels: The Life and Times of Sonny Barger. As narrated by Barger himself, the motorcycle club tries to live by as few rules as it can. They do have rules, however, which are essential to the survival of the club. There are severe consequences if a member breaks one of the most important parts of the code. Some are simply expelled and forced to abandon everything they know, while others, unluckily, lose their lives. There are a lot of tough guys who would be interested in joining the Hells Angels just to show off as well. The club can take as long as it needs to determine if someone is committed and loyal enough to become a member, since few make the cut. Vancouver Sun reports that prospective members have to go through a lengthy process before they can even be considered, a process that could last many years. Before voting begins, it can take a prospective member several years to become associated with the club. A crime journalist, Neil Hall, says in his book, Hell to Pay, Hells Angels Reverse the $1 Million Rat, a candidate must have already been personally acquainted with a full member for no less than 5 years before they can even be considered for membership. Qualified acquaintances can try to become an official friend if they have sponsors and win unanimous approval in their first chapter vote. One has to count years as candidates move up to what is known as hang-arounds and then prospects before the full membership's final vote takes place. Hells Angels display their heraldry and insignia in battle as the warriors did of old. There is certainly a modern twist to the bikers' iconic imagery, meaning that the club's founders were smart enough to trademark and copyright the symbols known as patches. This way, the bikers need to protect their IP and strictly forbids anyone else from wearing their insignia. Most of them obey the rules, whether it is out of fear from legal repercussions or simply just not wanting to get beat up. As Sonny Barger says in his book, members are willing to fight for their club and the symbols that represent it as well. Anyone caught wearing a badge without membership will certainly have his butt kicked. Hells Angels members proudly display the Hells Angels logo and Deathhead's winged skull insignia on their vests and jacket. In reality, they just have to. To show their commitment to the club, members are required to wear the patches and vests whenever they are together, according to the Duluth News-Tribune. The Hells Angels know that other members will always be there for them when they're in trouble, just like soldiers who depend on their comrades in battle. The main rule is to always back other members up, according to the Hells Angels president George Christie when he talked about his experience in a History Channel docuseries. Yes, even if it leads to violent, bloody encounters. This important rule had been Christie's guide even before he became an angel. When he was a prospect for the Los Angeles chapter, an outsider with a bad attitude angered Old Man John, the president. John hit the man several times and threatened to cut his throat with a knife, watching Christie as he did to gauge his reaction. John was testing him and was satisfied with the recruit, seeing that Christie was willing to back whatever action John took. John then cut off the imposter's jacket and kicked him out of the bar. A Hells Angels club meeting is a vital part of the organisation, and it is a forum for discussing important matters. But any sort of illegal activity is not being tackled here. In official discussions, these subjects are completely avoided for the sake of the club's security. According to Christie, even though the Hells Angels do not consider themselves a criminal organisation, they still acknowledge that some of their members may be involved in activities outside the law. Members are therefore forbidden from discussing these outside activities at the club, or in any other way that would bring the group's reputation into disrepute. Law enforcement agencies categorise the club as criminal because it is easier to target the organisation as a whole rather than the specific members. Yet, this is an easy way to see why it is so difficult for the police to infiltrate Hells Angels. Moreover, the club has created highly effective barriers to law enforcement with strict rules, the years-long membership process, the restrictions on speech and behaviour, and its structured hierarchy. The Hells Angels spend a considerable amount of time on their bikes and often travel together as a group, just like other motorcycle clubs. What is the basic qualification for joining the Hells Angels? Obviously, to ride a motorcycle. Then, with a chain of command similar to a paramilitary organisation, the established hierarchy is respected at all times. To represent a fearless leader, the chapter president always rides in front, taking all the possible risks like collisions. The next one should be the vice president, followed by the road captain and the sergeant of arms, and then the more chaotic ones, followed with the prospects always at the back of the pack. Once the formation has been established, the riders should stick with it to keep orderliness while on the road. And since Hells Angels never leave any brother behind, pulling over together is often necessary, especially if a member has been stopped by a police. However, there are things that instantly disqualify a person before even trying to become a member of the Hells Angels. Child molesters and rapists can never join the group. The group does not allow anyone that has connection to law enforcement, so anyone who had a record of applying as a police officer or even a prison guard can never be allowed to join the club. What do you think is the reason behind these strict rules? Would it be because it will be easier for bikers to continue certain criminal activities without getting caught? One more thing, loyalty means everything to the Hells Angels, and so there is no way they would ever accept someone who has vowed to any other group or cause, even if it is to uphold the law. Hells Angels despise people who leak the private business of the club or its members to law enforcement. Same goes with snitches and rats who are loud-talking bullies, pushing people around and talking tough when the club surrounds them. Those people who thump their chest, yell about how much they love the club and how they are going to be with them for the rest of their lives, they are the true enemy. To attract the most loyal members possible, the initiation process is so long and thorough. The Hells Angels do not officially recognise any retirement from the club and expect members to stay as long as they live. A chapter becomes a new member of the family and his brothers gather to honour his memory when he dies. Barger narrated in his book that early on, the cops would mock the bikers' mile-long processions during the funerals of deceased members. But this tradition has become a common practice almost everywhere nowadays. The Hells Angels admit that some members have been forced to disassociate themselves due to problems with the law, while others have been expelled for breaking the code. Some of them are unlucky that even a punishment would not be enough. As reported by the Duluth News Tribune, some have had their Hells Angels themed tattoos burned off, while others have resigned and were forced to return anything with the Hells Angels name or death head insignia, just like what happened to George Christie upon his retirement. According to the former member, he explained his reasons for quitting and thought he left on good terms. However, he was shocked weeks later to discover that he was not in good standings with the club. As a result, all contacts ended with men that used to consider him a brother. As a precaution, members are not allowed to talk to the media, as Hells Angels keep business privately, just another one of the many steps the club takes to retain their secrecy and security. Personal information about every member is kept safe from reporters. Barger further admits that other rules and parts of the Hells Angels code will never be released to the public. Barger wrote that women, who usually are the wives or girlfriends of the members, are more than welcome to hang out at the clubhouse. They understand that these women spend much time with their partners, often on the road as well. The women even wore the treasured patches to increase the exposure of the insignia. However, they can only attend meetings on special occasions because women are not allowed to ever become official members. According to the Vancouver Sun, the Hells Angels also rely upon women in key positions to gather intelligence on law enforcement agencies and rival gangs. The club has had these women spies as air traffic controllers and even in the military to obtain information that is vital to the organisation. The Hells Angels have been very open about their use of drugs like weed and booze, while heroin and needles are forbidden. However, they set guidelines on the use of drugs to limit the chaos that comes with it, mostly because it damages the reputation of the club. Other rules are more specific for certain circumstances. Sonny Barger wrote in his book that smoking weed or even cigarettes is prohibited during meetings. If a certain member is under parole, probation, or might get drug tested, no one should spike the booze because nobody wants to get messed up unexpectedly. What do you think about these Hells Angels rules? Let us know your thoughts.